Hey everybody, this is Rory back with just kind of our first spring update from the vineyard. We've been pretty busy. Spring has sprung here definitely, although it's kind of interesting. It's despite it being kind of like a really dry winter, we've only gotten like a little bit less than half of our average rainfall. We've had some nice cold mornings, so it's actually looking kind of like a late bud break. It's April 1st is tomorrow, and we're just starting to see some of the beginnings of bud break out in the earliest blocks. So things like, kind of strange blocks like the Riesling and the Napa Gamay, and in the weakest parts of the Sauvignon Blanc, we're starting to see just the start of a little bit of bud break. But everything's slow this year. It's kind of interesting. But it's great because we've had some nice cold mornings over the winter, and hopefully that kind of helps set the clock on the vines really nicely, despite the pretty dry winter. So we're hopeful for more rainfall, but it's I guess you could say we're not really counting on it. So we are in full-blown taking care of the cover crop mode. And I'm actually out here in the Red Barn Cabernet, the Cabernet right next door to the entrance to the winery, as you can see behind me. And I'm out here because we're doing kind of a cool thing in this area. So many of you know, for most of our acreage, we're out there mowing. We send through with a mower that chops up all the cover crop. And then we go through with a disc and a hoe plow, and we incorporate that cover crop into the soil. And that has worked for us for so many years, and it's been a huge part of how we maintain our vineyards as dry farm vineyards, and incorporates all that organic matter back into the soil. And we've got super healthy soils as a result. And we're super happy with that. And, that's what's still happening on most of our acreage. Here at Red Barn, though, we're trying something just a little bit different as well, which, for us, it's a little unorthodox, I guess you could say, but we're giving it a shot anyway, just because, you got to be kind of constantly pushing the envelope. So we're doing something called roller crimping, and I'll kind of overlay a little bit of a video in here about from some previous footage of the roller crimper actually working, and we'll go take a look at it as well. But I wanted to show you some of the results of the roller crimping and talk a little bit about what it is and why we're doing it, and some of the hypothetical benefits of doing it. So let's turn this camera around and kind of take a look at what we're working with here. So we're walking down one of the recently crimped rows. So Giovanni was on the crimper this morning, and he's gone through now and run over this cover crop, which you can see the stuff under vine is still untouched, but the stuff in row we've gone through with our roller crimper and flattened it, and crimped it, really is a way of saying it. So I wanted to get down and kind of look at this in detail and figure out, okay, like what's the deal with roller crimping, right? So with mowing, we're going through here and chopping all this down, and it gets chopped up into a million pieces, and then it gets turned over and incorporated into the soil. Now with the crimping, this just stays like this. This doesn't get disked. It doesn't get mixed into the soil. It just sits here as, importantly, a kind of like green mulch. And so I wanted to kind of, dig in here and show you what that means. So up close, you can see that all these little green plants have been flattened, and they're really blocking out any view of the soil. And that's super important. So we've tried to build a big cover crop in here again, just so that we get all this green mulch that's on top, that is, even though this stuff is looks like it's just been rolled over, what's really been happening here is, we can look at the root of a daikon. This has been crimped, so this is where the roller hit it and basically terminated the cover crop. So this is going to dry out and turn all brown and look like a brown mat on the ground. But what that's doing is hopefully getting down there and really preserving some of the moisture in the soil, and allowing a kind of fungal microclimate to grow underneath this mat. And there's some research to indicate basically that when you maintain untilled and unmixed and kind of intact all of that soil structure, what you're doing is preserving some of the fungal life in the soil, and preserving some of the some of the subtle microflora and microflora connections that you can get in a vineyard that is as healthy as ours. And there are some perceived benefits to that in terms of soil structure, in terms of water holding capacity, and especially in terms of a soil's ability to store carbon and build up organic matter. So what I don't know is whether that's true. So there's plenty of kind of soil science research that could indicate that this could be something beneficial for us. Whether it's true to the point where it's going to work in our vineyard and where I'm not going to have to irrigate these vines, because we know that tilling works in the sense of maintaining the soil moisture in the soil, making it available for the vines to use, making sure that other plants, that weeds, residual cover crops, things like that, that those don't keep growing and keep sucking up water out of the soil, which is super important in a year like this where we had really low rainfall. It worked last year. We had really low rainfall last year. The vines did super well. Red Barn in general, the reason we picked this part of our vineyard is because it's one of the most vigorous blocks that we farm. And so these vines, not so much that they need to be lowered in vigor, but they've got a little extra juice. They've got a little bit of a buffer to the point where I'm less likely to kill the vines, I guess is a way of saying that. And so that's why we're experimenting in this part of the vineyard, and hopefully it all goes well. And this is, one of those multi-year experiments. There's another section of the vineyard over by the refrigeration unit, actually, where we've tried to experimented with a little biochar as well as compost in here. So there's a lot going on out here at Red Barn. It's a bit of a sandbox in terms of messing around with different techniques, messing around with kind of different approaches to the way that we manage the cover crops and manage our soil. For me, certain tenets still exist where I don't want to irrigate these grapes. I couldn't even if I wanted to. Well, we don't have we have a beautiful undervine system here with no irrigation lines, no ability to irrigate, and basically I'm trying to figure out a cover crop mix, figure out a crimping program, figure out a soil management program that allows me to build up maximum amount of soil carbon stored in the soil, builds up the organic content of the soil, and promotes the healthy microflora that increasingly we feel are not just nice things to have in your soil that are good for biodiversity, but absolutely essential to vine health and to expression of terroir, to the kind of expression, the idea that the microflora in the soil is going to be reflected in the way that the vines grow, the way that they ripen their fruit, and ultimately in the wines that we make from that, to make this wine, the wine from this block, from these rows, from these vines, as distinctive and as delicious as possible. So that's the kind of procedure with it. Maybe we'll go take a look and show you the actual roller crimper and look at a couple of videos, but it's I want to kind of give you a little bit of the details behind the thinking with it. I've been experimenting with this technique now for 3 years up at my mom's ranch at Tres Saboras, and it's really, I've just been loving how even after 3 years you start digging through that mat, and it's not just a bunch of chopped up greenery. There's chopped up greenery with mycelia from different fungal life existing under there, and it's a whole different ecosystem underneath that mat. And I dig that. I think that's where we need to be at, and keeping to build that up, with the contention that, with the caveat that these vines need to, fully ripen their grapes. They need to not collapse late season. I also don't want it to look like garbage, but that's, lots of different things to consider. And whenever you change such a huge part of your program, going about it super cautiously, but very, very excited about it. So hope you guys think it's as cool as I do. Sorry to geek out a little bit on it, but I think it's pretty fun, and it's helping us out right now because all of our mowers are actually technically broken right now. So crimping is the only thing we can do at this particular moment in time. We're getting the other ones fixed today, so it's been a bit of a crazy spring in terms of breaking tractors, but that's all right. So we'll go check out this other stuff and see what's up. So I want to kind of show you a little bit of a before photo. So this is a row that's about to be crimped, and you can kind of see what the setup is here before we go through with the roller crimper. So, the white flowers that you're seeing, that's not actually white mustard, which kind of confusingly, white mustard has yellow flowers. But these are daikon radishes that I've used in here because I think that, one of the concerns I have is maybe the top of this soil compacting a little bit in these crimped rows. So I want this daikon in there to help break up and allow soil and moisture down below the top level of soil. There's also, these little purple flowers that you can see, those are peas that are big. Peas are legumes, and they're going to be fixing nitrogen in the soil. So a big part of how we fix nitrogen. And then you can actually see some fabas in here. So this white flower in here is a faba bean, faba, with a B as in boy, not V as in Victor. There's a little bit of vetch and a little bit of residual oats and triticale wheat in here, but actually that's all just self-seeded. So with this particular mix, I actually cut out all the vetch and all the oats in this cover crop mix, because I noticed that those were sort of the cover crops that tended to crimp the least well last year. So they would go down, but then they would spring right back up and kind of keep sucking moisture out of the soil. So I planted heavily with different types of peas and the daikon radish and the faba beans. Vetch is strong, oats are strong, so they're still in there. We've been farming this soil here for so long with that mix that for sure that's gonna reseed and keep reseeding, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I'm gonna keep kind of playing with that mix, talk to other farmers who are using this technique, seeing what's working in their vineyard, and kind of figure out what flattens the best, what terminates best, what the best time to actually crimp this stuff. The reason we're doing it while all those white flowers are fully in bloom is because when the cover crop is blooming, the stalks of the plant are actually at their weakest. They're actually hollow at that point, because they're transferring so much of their energy into making those flowers, making the pollen. And so their stalks are at their weakest point. So if I come through and crimp at that point, then I've got the greatest chance of actually flattening those down. If I wait a little bit too long and it goes to seed, all of a sudden they harden off and it becomes a lot harder to do that. So timing, as in anything with organic viticulture, is paramount. So hopefully that works this year. So here we'll take a look at the crimper as well, which I think it's sexy, but it's really just a big metal drum filled with water. So it's very heavy. This is actually a kind of believe it or not, a small scale tractor that can barely handle the weight of this implement, but it's basically just a big 1.5 foot diameter chunk of steel filled with water. So super heavy, rolling down, crimping these cover crops. And you can see the little fins on there, and those are designed to hit those stalks and crimp them down and pinch them down so that they roll flat and they stay flat. Because if we just went through with a smooth roller, it probably wouldn't work as well. So these kind of chevron shaped the idea is not to break up the soil, so they're not sharp. They're super blunt. They're at least a 1/4 inch on the edges there. So the idea is kind of this blunt force trauma for the cover crop, not so much that you're trying to chop it like a mower. So anyway, Giovanni's on break, so he's taking a break from using this right now, but I'll show a little residual video and kind of just want to give you an idea of what this is and why we're doing it. So hope you guys enjoyed, and hope you enjoyed some of the geeking out on this stuff. It's pretty cool. We'll see you next time.